Yeah, there we are.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. The show today, we have got a conversation to go on about what's happening with sustainability now. Britain has decided to exit Europe, and a conversation about how you might be able to come and join us and either come on to the show or to just join the sustainability group. So first of all, we have a sustainability group on Facebook that you could be invited to. So if you're interested in doing that, we'll put up a link to ask you and send you some, those of you we know, we'll send you an invitation, which we hope that you'll share with us the things that you're doing. If you are keen to come on the show, if you'd like to either contact myself or Tim, we'd love to hear from you, or alternatively, to contact us via that Facebook page. Or there's also a Google Plus sustainability group you can join. All of those links we'll post up for you as soon as the show is over. So today, let me have a chat to Tim. Tim, what's your thoughts about the realities of the European exiting and what it might change in relationship to sustainable living?
The big area that's going to be tricky is energy. A lot of the European renewables that were being put in place depend upon a continent-wide system. So there was a lot of money going into what they call interconnectors, which are the connections between countries. Mm-hmm. Basically, the thinking is that, okay, the wind might not be blowing in Britain, but the sun will be shining in Spain. So if we have enough renewables distributed across a wide enough area, we should be able to balance it out. Mm-hmm. So if you like, I mean, it's not a certainty because obviously Britain can still negotiate those things, but it is one of the things in the Brexit mix that makes life just that wee bit more difficult. Because whereas you'd have negotiated a European-wide deal all in one go, now Britain's going to have to negotiate with 27 different countries. Yeah. So if we end up shrinking down to just Britain and we're going to try and rely just on our energy resources, then we just aren't going to do it. Our economy is going to collapse. Yeah, but again, I mean, my feeling with the whole Brexit thing was while everyone had a sort of instinctive kind of let's vote to leave, I'm not sure that anyone really figured out what does that actually mean. So again, I don't know that it's just related to energy. I think that seems to be my take on all of the discussion in the last week. It's just sort of
with the Brexit thing, there were just so many issues. That's what my decision was. I found very hard. So there were so many issues to be voting on, because there's a whole conglomerate of things in there. But actually, do we want to stay in or do we want to go out? A lot of people seem to have voted on the basis of the immigration, as they saw it, problem. A lot of people voted because they didn't like the people I've spoken to anyway, have voted out because they didn't like the fact that the European Parliament is getting bigger and bigger. It seems to be a more and more cumbersome machine. It's like working with a great big company that it's over cumbersome. People get in without really being voted in. We don't have a right to get them out again. And if we don't like them, how do we get rid of certain European parliamentary member? And it doesn't appear to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. It seems to be looking after the few, not the many. So that seems to be the issue that seems to be getting totally no airtime, but for many of the people I've spoken to about why they chose to exit, they were far more interested in that part of it. But then there's also all the other issues, the free market, which I suppose is partly tied into the immigration, which is why it's being brushed up so widely, because it has an economic knock-on. And there's also the security stuff, there's just so many different bits. And people I've spoken to who voted out have not voted out on immigration at all, even though that seems to be the only subject area that's floating around the media. Most of the people that I've spoken to who did vote out did not vote out because of immigration. They voted out for many, many different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, there are so many issues tied up in this that it's probably impossible for them to have a campaign around all of them. Yeah, I mean, one of the problems we have now in relation to climate change is all of the treaties that the European Union signed when we were part of the European Union, we've now got to go and renegotiate. And of course, one of the problems is looking at some of the people who are pro-leave in the campaign, the politicians, also tend to come from that section of politics that doesn't think climate change is a real thing. And would much prefer to sort of spend what remaining resources we have digging oil and gas out of the ground than deploying renewables. So you could see a fairly dramatic shift in Britain's sort of energy and climate policies back towards fossil fuels, which, as you know, I mean, my view of this is actually there just aren't enough fossil fuels to do that. I think on energy sustainability, just in terms of energy sustainability, without worrying about the climate issue, we still need to deploy renewables.
Very much so. But what I've noticed in the American community is there seems to be a bigger and bigger number looking for off-grid living. I wonder whether that will start to kick in here if the fuel prices hike, which they've already hiked a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the evidence that I've picked up, I did a story about this morning. I mean, there is evidence now that we're going to see a drop in oil prices for the next couple of months. Now, with all of these things, the caveat is that most forecasts on oil are wrong. So this one possibly included. But essentially, a lot of the supply problems that were putting the price up earlier in the year, so the wildfires in Canada, problems in Libya, problems in Iran, Venezuela has had economic problems. Nigeria, you had terrorists took out the oil pipelines. So a lot of those problems that disrupted supply are now, they've been dealt with. So supply is now back up. So the thing that's keeping prices up at the moment is, it's not demand, it's projected demand. There's essentially people that are buying the oil are trying to second guess, well, okay, what are people going to be using in a few months' time? And the figures that they tend to do that on are United States weekly forecasts, which are actually quite bad figures. I mean, they're not good statistically, but they've tended to show that demand for oil in the US has been rising quite steadily. Part of the problem is when you look at the 3 monthly figures that are much more accurate, but they tend not to come out in time, so people tend not to use them. They've suggested that demand in America has been falling since about March. So what they're suggesting is everyone's bought oil on the basis that demand is going up, but actually demand is going down. And the problem that raises is, well, now that all of the supply is back online, we could be fueling this glut of oil. Now, what that does in the short term is brings prices down for you and I. But what it also causes is the capital flight away from investment in future oil and gas drilling. So the problem is, okay, this year probably will keep oil prices manageable. It kind of shouldn't be a problem. Sometime next year, possibly into 2018, we're going to reap the consequences of our failure to invest now. So the likelihood is then that we could see prices going up to sort of maybe up as far as £2 a litre, which will make a few eyes water, I suspect.
Well, it certainly will. I can speak for that in my own business. I run, I think I mentioned before, eco-friendly cleaning service, mostly carpet cleaning, but that does demand that I actually have to come to your home to do it, or your place of work, or wherever it is that needs sorting out. So I have no choice. I have to take my equipment to the place it's going to be used. And okay, I've done my best with the smallest size vehicle and the economic just way of getting there, and try to work the or where I go, being close together on any one particular day, so I'm not spending more time traveling than I need to. But nonetheless, I still have to use that fuel, and I'm sure that any business that has any number of people moving around has the same problem.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the crossover at this point, I don't know yet where the market is with it, is we're seeing a lot more electric cars coming on stream. So I noticed last week Renault were advertising their range. I mean, it's useful if you don't do huge amounts of driving. So if you're talking about doing perhaps 10, 20 miles within a day, then you've got more than enough battery charge to do that. If you were looking at driving any more than a couple of 100 miles, you're going to be stopping all the time to recharge. Now, it's doable, but it means it's not like a petrol car where you just fill up and drive on. I think a fast charge takes sort of 25 minutes, and that assumes there's nobody already queuing.
Yes, because I've been thinking about that myself, because in my business, I actually, of course, I'm going to someone's house and then I'm spending a period of time there doing whatever I'm doing, which is frequently a couple of hours. But of course, not everyone in their house happens to have a plug-in where I can just plug it in, or would be willing to let me plug in my car, I guess, because I'm guessing you can plug them into normal setups. But I don't know how that works really. Whether there's a special...
I plugged my son's electric car in when he was down here, when was that, 2 weeks ago. So I mean, the special connection is at the car end, not, so it's an ordinary 3-pin plug this end.
All right, okay, yeah. So wherever you were, I guess, then.
Yeah, I mean, it's more whether or not the person whose house it is going to be prepared to let you do it. It might be you have to knock some money off their bill in exchange for the electric.
That might be a way to do that problem.
But yeah, I mean, I think from a business point of view, I mean, if you get business finance to cover the cost of getting an electric car, it might be worth looking at. Because even though petrol prices are low now, they're certainly not going to stay that way in the long term. I think anyone that's sort of investing on the basis that oil prices are staying where they are probably is going to get into trouble. What I think will come actually is a kind of volatility, which I think we're already in a sense, where prices sort of bounce really high, then drop low, then bounce high, but really unpredictably. And it certainly makes then that decision about whether you're going to own a vehicle at all, and if so, how often you're going to use it, starts to become quite a serious consideration.
Oh, there's an awful lot of businesses, and not just my own, that relies very, very heavily on transporting things around it. And I think we're all going to find that if that volatility does jump in and it gets particularly high, we're all going to find that all our ordinary everyday goods are going to be significantly more expensive.
Yes, I mean, in a way, we'll see some of that with the fall in the value of the pound, which will now start to make exports a little bit more expensive. I mean, that'll take time to filter through because of the way futures contracts work. So you're probably not going to see prices in the shops go through the roof immediately, or if you do, it's because the supermarkets are making a killing on the back of it.
Oh, I'm sure that will happen. You've already seen a few prices change, despite the fact that we're not even actually evoked the actual exit laws yet. But people will. They take advantage of the fact that maybe they needed to put their prices up anyway. Maybe they've been low for a while, and now's an opportunity to put it up and use it as an excuse.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be later in the year when the current round of futures contracts have been worked through that you'll see prices start to go up.
And the fact that the banks are being a bit more hedgy about loans, and people are wondering whether they should be investing in London or whether it won't be the grand capital, and whether they need to invest somewhere else in Europe instead. I think those things will start to kick in a little bit into the economy as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, it probably more impacts on future investment decisions than it does on current ones. So essentially, if somebody's already invested the money in the UK, they're not going to write off that money. They'll keep with it. So again, in the future, it may have an impact, but then we don't know what the settlement will be. So no, I think from our point of view, I mean, the difficulty for me is that everyone assumes sustainability is easy. I think the problem is that sustainability is expensive.
Yes.
I think we know it in a sense at our own household level.
Yes, we do. I mean, certainly I do.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you wanted to have...
In sustainable growing for some time, but it's not something I could do all at once. I took time to prepare the ground and get it ready, to build a wormery, get it ready, to buy beehives and get them up and running, and with the consequent problems that I've had in the meantime, partly from my own inexperience and partly through natural disasters, but it's you need a new set of bit more knowledge to be able to do that more successfully. You need experience, you need all kinds of things, as well as putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, I mean, the money side of it, as you say, there's all of the costs involved in even in learning how to do that stuff. Mm-hmm. But you've got all of the trial and error to start with. But then if you imagine trying to make your house totally energy efficient, so you're going to put solar thermal and solar PV panels on the roof, maybe have a heat source pump somewhere outside, you're going to replace all your central heating with underfloor linked to an air exchanger. I change the gas cooker out and get a halogen hob, do all of those things. You're getting into tens of thousands of pounds.
Very much so. And one of the things that we've been looking at is because we're about, we're thinking of moving home. It's actually, there's an awful lot of amazing stuff known about passive housing, but there aren't any to buy. No.
I mean, there's Cardiff University actually built a sustainable house. It was something George Osborne had been going on about how they wanted to develop energy efficient housing. And Osborne famously had said it's impossible to do it. So Cardiff University did it. And then Osborne scrapped the funding that he said he'd make available if it could be done.
Yes, and there's the new town that's just been allotted the rights to grow. Belgian company is going to put one up in Holland, I believe, but it's still very much under it. This is the prototype, and even if you build it, we're not going to necessarily let you get away with it. We might make you take it all down again afterwards. And you think, why? It's still not even that far agreed that this can work. I suspect you need the right people living in it, because it's all very well putting up the housing, and that might be energy efficient, but actually to make the stuff grow so that you can actually feed yourselves does demand some skills, along with the engineering bits that makes that sustainability work, I guess.
Well, and I think also far more land than there are people at the moment. Or sorry, far less land than there are people. But I mean, the average sized garden isn't going to do it when you think of all of the new build flats and stuff they've built that don't have gardens at all.
Yes, and that's it. I mean, there's all this vertical growth all very well, but the reality is that it's much harder to manage, particularly if it's outside, because as you go up any distance, you've got wind to contend with. And there's only certain plants that grow well in those forms of hydroponic, aquaponic type growing. You can grow leafy vegetables, you can at a push grow some fruiting things, but it's certainly never going to grow corn or wheat or that sort of flour, and it's just not going to work. They're not going to grow that way. It's certainly not economically. Yes, we can grow our salad crops. Fine, brilliant. And we might be able to do that, but you're only going to effectively attack one sector of the marketplace, the current salad growers. We'll have to find some other way of doing it, I guess. But and even so, even if you had skilled people doing it, if you're growing it outside, then those plants are going to be just as susceptible to weeds, pests, and diseases. And I'm sure the slugs will learn how to crawl up walls if they haven't already done so.
I've got one that seems to have worked out how to burrow its way in through my window. Because I get up in the morning and there's all slime trails on the carpet underneath. So yes, I mean, they're fully capable of decimating your crops if you turn your back on them. But yeah, I mean, they're all things at the moment we can put up with slugs and pests and stuff because we're not dependent upon what we're growing to stay alive. You know, I mean, if I relied on what I'm growing to stay alive, I'd be dead within a week. Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate that there's a shop up the road that I can go to get food every week.
Yes.
Yeah, I
mean, I've been doing it a long time, and I was fully self-sustaining when the children were small, and I've moved on. I now haven't got anything like the same land space. So there's only two of us, and I'm learning how to get the most out of that plot. But even so, if I had to rely on it totally, we would struggle. We'd have quite a few salads, but there wouldn't be much to go with it. You know, there wouldn't be any eggs or cheese or meat or anything at present.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem again with talking about the cost of sustainability, that at the moment we're fully dependent on a globalized economy. So you'll have food coming into the shops now that's come in from the other side of the world. And you know, that seasonality that you used to have, we no longer have because we're in somebody else's season. You know, so in a sense, we always have been able to bring food in whenever and whatever we need. The twofold dangers really are if the global economy starts to slow down, and given the impacts of climate change now on a lot of the food growing areas of the world, that we may find that we can't obtain food in that way in the future. And the problem is we're not set up internally in the UK to actually be self-sufficient. I think we potentially could grow about 60% of our food. Obviously, a lot of what we're growing now is geared up to export because it's part of that system. So we could sort of rejig what we're growing for export in order to do homegrown crops, but it still leaves us short 40%.
Yes, very much so, particularly in the meat and dairy sector, and certainly the wine. We know we're going to be a bit short on the wine front. We've probably got a bit of beer, but not much else. Well, I suppose we're pretty good at cider. I don't know. I actually don't know what the numbers are, but.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is less to do with the crops that you're going to grow. It's to do with calorific value in the end. So again, at the moment, within the global economy, we're all struggling because we've got too many calories. Yeah, it's an ongoing battle with me to try to keep weight down, you know, because we've got accustomed to abundance. If you went back to growing your own, then you have that problem of actually how do you get enough calories?
Yes. And it's tough to do, I have to say, because I set about doing it myself when my children were small, and I trained in agriculture, so I knew how to grow things, and I had a very large garden at my disposal. Even then, I had about an acre. I grew all the fruit and vegetables pretty much that we needed, but I also went out to work and part-time milking and what have you on another little farm, and so I had the opportunity to collect my eggs and milk and the like, and we did grow some goats, and we ate goat meat and the odd pig, which we grew ourselves. But you know, if you're going to start putting animals in the picture, you need a lot more space, an awful lot more space. And you need protein from somewhere or other. It's all very well, you can eat beans and peas and they will give you some, but you need a heck of a lot of it if you're going to replace your meat with that. I know that it can be done on a much smaller area. I think John Seymour said a few years ago when I was about 15, I read his book, he reckoned 10 acres the sort of family needed to be able to supply itself with food. I would have said with the new technologies available, particularly with aquaponics, if you can set it up, and that is dependent on the fact you can provide yourself with sufficient warmth and electric power to run such a thing and the skills to do so, you can produce a lot of food on a much smaller space. But even so, you'd probably be hard pushed to feed a family on less than about 3 acres, 3 or 4.
Yeah, and the problem is that's an awful lot of land for where the people are.
Not very many houses have got 4 acres attached.
No. I mean, our yoga centre up the road from here has half an acre, which is actually quite big. You know, it would take a lot of work to actually cultivate all of that. You know, so you'd be talking 6 times that amount. You know, which is, you know, basically your family, if you're going to feed a family in that way, is going to have to do a lot of work.
Oh yes. It's not an easy life. I mean, that's the thing, you have to keep at it 24/7, 365 days a year, no matter whether you feel fine or not. That's one of the things that I found quite tough. We had milking animals, and if you're ill, and you've still got to do it, you cannot let them go. You can't not milk them, you know, unless you want very, very sick animals, and you lose your yield very, very quickly. But you have to do it, no matter how you're feeling, or you know, even if you've just had a baby and you can hardly stand up, you still got to go out there and do it. It's not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, this is why, I mean, at the moment, we're plugged into a wider global economy. So, in a sense, we can make mistakes and we can learn from them. I mean, it's why I think that, because I think there are two ways in which the crisis we're in plays out. The one is we get a really catastrophic economic collapse. And suddenly nobody wants to ship food from the places where food grows into the places that need it. Because the moment there's no money in that, the moment there's no value in it, people will stop doing it.
Yes.
In that circumstance, I suspect people will die. It's that simple. That we're just not going to be able to feed ourselves. There'll be survivors, and the survivors will carry on. But a lot of people aren't going to make it. If we're lucky, it will play out as a much more gradual decline economically, where people get forced back into localized economies. Now, if we're lucky and it plays out that way, then we've got that time to continue learning. The global economy itself will be intermittent rather than gone altogether. It's okay, you might not be importing food all the time, but there'll be times when there'll be food coming in. And I mean, okay, you're not going to be going out for McDonald's or any of that nonsense anymore, but we'll survive.
Yes, it's something, of course, like, I mean, we rely at the moment on, we go out and buy our bread, and we do grow a lot of wheat and barley and oats here. However, we don't have sunshine levels, certainly not at present, to really get a lot of protein in our wheat. So therefore, it's much harder for us to grow high quality bread flour, for instance, the stuff that's got all that protein in it to be able to capture and the gluten, which of course some people can't eat, but it actually captures the air in the bread that makes it nice and soft. And we quite often, at the moment, we supplement, let's say, our bread flour with soy products or other protein products, mostly soy, I think, to make it strong enough to be able to keep bread running well, which is pretty much a staple. I'm guessing that it, a kick back to what was called rationing might turn up on the stairs, which none of us will like very much at all.
Well, I mean, rationing is preferable to free-for-alls.
Which very rich got fed and the very poorest wouldn't get any and just die.
Yeah, I mean, if it's allowed to be a free-for-all, then it's whoever's able to muscle their way in and fill up their trolleys with whatever's left. They get. So like when we had the fuel blockades a couple of years back, that people ended up emptying the shops almost overnight of bread and milk. And then a week later, you've got people asking, well, what can I do with stale bread and gone off milk? Because it's a very durable food stuff. So it's not, I mean, I guess you could freeze it, but it's not something you can easily hoard.
If you've got the power as well, we don't end up with a 3-day week, which was the other potential problem. But I still feel that it's about what we can do daily, not. Yes, I mean there is a what they call themselves preppers group around the American society where they're saying fill your bunker with salt and sugar and vinegar and such like things and rendered fats. You can do that if you've got the space, time, energy, and finance to be able to do that. But even if you do collect a year or 2 years food and you've got it somewhere hidden away in some bunker or other in your home, as I think you've mentioned before, what happens the day you've chopped your arm trying to cut the wood or whatever? You're going to be in trouble.
Yes, I mean, the moment you get ill, you need other people. It's that simple. I don't think I'd want to be eating flour and dried eggs and nothing else either. You still got to have the fresh
incoming regular stuff that's freshly grown. And again, some people have the skills to do that, but not everybody does.
No, I mean, what I try to do myself, what I'd advise almost anyone to do at this stage is keep about 3 weeks worth of basic rations in storage in your house. So if you're running a freezer, if you've got one of the big chest freezers, that's great. Keep that regularly stocked up. Have a supply of tin food and dried food. And if you can manage 3 weeks worth, that's probably about as much as the average house will do. Any more than that, and you're ending up filling up your living space with food, sort of keeping food under the bed and stuff, which just isn't going to work.
No, and the thing is that things go off, don't they? As you rightly say, you can't. There's only, I mean, yes, there are foods that will keep significant amounts of time. I mean, I will say I bottle my fruit each year, and I know it'll last perfectly well into the next year. No, I bottle enough when I pick the rhubarb to keep me going until the next year's fresh stuff comes in. And similar with other fruits and vegetables, and I keep my peas and beans and stuff frozen in the freezer, so that I'm eating the fresh stuff straight off the crop, but the rest of it is being put in the freezer that hopefully will last me through. It doesn't always last all year, but I do pretty well on that front because it's something I've done for a long time and learned to do. But even so, I just think that's straightforward economics that for me, it's just as straightforward as that. It's not about whether I'm trying to prepare myself for some terrible contingency. It's just something that I choose to do because I happen to know how to do that. And I'm more than willing to share that knowledge with anybody who wants it. But and I keep bees because I like bees. But if you were going to actually supply yourself with enough sugar replacement, if the sugar wasn't there, to keep you going all year, you need an awful lot. You've got to probably have at least 3 hives of bees per household. And that takes a bit of space, and it's not everywhere you can keep them. You don't really want them in the garden when the kids are playing out there.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of collapse that you'd get into that would make that work probably isn't one that you're going to live through anyway.
I hope I never get that. I hope we never do. I do hope, I do believe that people have got a tremendous number of skills between them. And I think that's really the main criteria, hence the reason why I joined the Link for Growth community. I think we do need to have a significant community. We need to know who does what, and we need to be able to relate to them well, and so that we can share out those skills, so that if worst comes to worst, I can supply you with some honey or vegetables or whatever, and somebody else can supply me with sorting out my glass house breaking down or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that is the only way we'll get through that. Sort of anything else, I think, sort of trying to plan on a complete collapse isn't going to work. If you plan on something like the fuel protests of, what is it, going back 15 years ago? But it's reckoned we've got about 9 meals each in the country at any time. So if we had an economic collapse where that was what we had to fall back on, you probably need to cover yourself for a week or so after that before governments will step in and start rationing and doing what needs to be done. Now, if government messes up, then I think we're all in trouble, but I don't see any other way of doing it. Essentially, there's no way we as individuals are going to do that preppy thing of having 2 years worth of tins beans in the basement.
Well, you've got an enormous house and an enormous bank account to be able to put it there, and even if you did, you'd constantly have to presumably eat 2-year-old stuff, because you'd have to take it off the end of that and use it and put some new back so that you keep 2 years worth without it going off. So I'm guessing that's quite a strange way of wanting to live your life.
The other problem here, I can kind of see it in America because there are still some quite wide open spaces. Part of the problem here is if you're in the countryside somewhere and you've stashed away all of this food and you're in a big house, there are going to be a lot of people coming out of London and the southeast who are going to take it off I don't know how much ammunition you'd have in your bunker, but sooner or later you're going to run out.
Desperate people will go to desperate measures, and I think we're better off, creating communities so that we don't have to get to that point.
Well, I mean, that's the idea behind Link for Growth, is to set that community up before if this happens, so that we've got some degree of resilience to get through it. Otherwise, I mean, I suspect we'd get a couple of weeks of madness if things broke down, but I think we'd get through that fairly quickly. So I think as soon as people start to realize that there's no point in trying to steal stuff off the guy down the road because he's in the same boat that you're in, once you understand that, then you can start working together.
I think there's the other side to that, isn't there? There's also the fact that I suppose it was demonstrated to me when I went to work in an area of the world which don't have the same educational value or educational standards that we have. Perhaps that's the right way of putting it. I went to work on the Thai-Burmese borders, where large numbers of people are restricted and can't go to school and don't get the same education, and therefore that whole community doesn't have the same resilience in the sense that of education around them. Whereas here, most people at least have been to school till they were 15 or 16, if not further, and a large proportion of the community have gone a lot further with their education. So I've always taken for granted the fact, really, that we have all this stuff around us, but actually it was very much brought home to me that here, if I was to get ill today, there's somebody on the road who knows how to fix me up. And although we might try to, we treat our NHS as, I've heard oodles of complaints about it doesn't do this and it doesn't do that, but actually it's filled with people, not gods, who do their best, and among them, those people, some of them are very highly educated in certain aspects of health. Unfortunately, it does seem to be broken up a little bit, so that, if you go in with you think a tummy ache for whatever it is, then you go down that track, and it might actually be the problem is over here, and you need to see some other doctor with a specialism in that area. So there are, let's say, failings in that system. But nonetheless, in the country, we have the knowledge. Somewhere along the line, we have people who do their damnedest to try to help you get well. If you go into an area like where I was working, where those skill levels just aren't there, the lass who was running the hospital was about 18. She'd done an open university course on midwifery. She ran the hospital because she was the best educated person. She didn't have, she had a few Disprins and aspirins and Panadols that, various visited and walked past and seen these poor people in dreadful state and left behind because they happened to have one in the handbag. There's no access to the medication. And she's relying wholeheartedly on just general pleasantry and care and washing and cleaning up of these people. When they've got malaria, they've got terrible injuries, they've got all kinds of things that she's trying to deal with. And we take all of that for granted here. Absolutely do. All of that for granted.
It's another side of sustainability expenses. So if you think to train one of these skilled medics, we've got to allow that person to take time out to do 6, 7, 8 years of learning.
Yes. And
so the rest of society has to collectively agree to that resource being devoted to that end. Now, I think the problem is, as you run down on resources, so as you're fighting to sustain what we've got, it becomes harder and harder to keep people doing that sort of stuff. Now, I think a lot of that relates to the amount of energy available to the society. So essentially, we've lived on this boon of fossil fuels for the best part of a century, and it's becoming more expensive to do it. So we will never run out of fossil fuels. It's getting harder and harder to get them. So they'll be there in the ground. But in a sense, in the ground is not a good place for us to have them if we haven't got some replacement.
Or some means within the budgetary allowances of what we have.
Well, I mean, the problem with, there are a lot of great ideas out there at the moment on what we could do to replace a fossil fuel energy system. And the way it's proceeding, if you like, at the top, which goes back to what you were saying right at the beginning of this. That, I mean, one of the things I was reading this week was about Google have invested billions in using renewable energy to power their data centers. Now, I think that is one of the ways that we will make the switch, is that big companies are going to start investing in securing their energy supplies. Where the problems are going to come in is a lot of the resources that renewable energy generation is built out of require fossil fuels to obtain.
Yes.
Yeah, and particularly the rare earth metals that at the moment, I think it's only China that's doing them because they are incredibly polluting. I think the USA is either they have just started or they're investing in it. But essentially, so we're reliant at the moment on China. They in turn are shipping the raw materials in from around the world. The problem is that if all of the big businesses start deploying renewables, we're not going to actually have the resources to allow it to happen. Mm-hmm. So again, it happens chaotically. So you could get to the point that Google has got a lovely, shiny new data center that's being powered on wind turbines and solar panels, but the hospital down the road can't function because there's no energy. Because we have that kind of mismatch. So again, it's that kind of, should we be planning this stuff or should we just be letting it happen?
It's all of those resource-hungry things, particularly medical care, which the rest of us in Britain at the moment are paying in towards its maintenance, but we're not really, certainly not investing in any of that sort of stuff, are we?
No, the NHS comparatively, if you look at other health systems around the world, it is fantastically good value for money. The problem is, I guess, that it's never going to do everything. We are still going to get illnesses that kill people, whether we like it or not. So sometimes it's our expectations that are at fault rather than the system. As you say, yes, there are problems, but there are also people working within there to try and iron them out. My question with it is, well, what happens if the economy that supports things like an NHS is no longer able to do so?
And that's the real problem, isn't it? The problem area of how we might collectively achieve continuation. Anyway, I'm sorry, my guys and my dears, but I do have to go now. So, and it's just gone 3:30 now. So,
okay. So we'll put the links up for the Facebook group.
Pardon?
We'll put the links up for the Facebook group, and we'll see everybody next time.
And hopefully, we'll look to see what people are doing right now that they're contributing in their own little way to the benefits of the world. Thank you.
Good.
Good to speak to you, Tim.
Okay, see you next time.
Okay, I think we're off.